Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another Books and Looks video. If you are one of my normal watchers, thank you so much for watching all of my videos. As you know, I'm Jen. And if you are new here, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you are entertained and you find a new book that you might want to read and or a new look you might want to try. So, what I do is I talk about a book that I have recently read. I tell you the whole story, beginning to end, from the best of my memory, the things that stand out to me, basic plot points, spoilers included. And then I do my makeup at the same time. So, it's kind of like a book review slash get ready with me blend together because really those are two things I really love, books and makeup. So, here we are. That said, shall we begin? My book today is Agatha Christie's The Mysterious Affair at Styles. Now, it says across the top that this is the first Hercule Poirot mystery, and I have no idea if I'm saying that name right. If I'm botching it, I'm so sorry. But that's how I say it in my head, Hercule Poirot. So it's apparently the first one with him as the detective. I've only read a handful of her things, so I don't know. I'm assuming if it's written on the book that it's true. So it was good. I really liked it, and I'm excited to tell you about it. But I will tell you, I'm going to spoil it. I'm going to tell you who done it. I'm going to tell you why they done it and everything. It was a complicated story, as is typical if you're familiar with Agatha Christie at all. Her stories have a fair amount of characters, not so many that you like get confused or anything, but enough characters that it's complicated. And the mysteries are complicated. When it unravels at the end, she does tend to have like at the end, when you get to the end of the story, like the murder is solved, but then there was also some other crime included to some capacity that was like gumming up the mystery and making it difficult to solve. But Hercule Poirot is smart and he's able to untangle it all. That's the thing. And this one is no different because we have the primary murder and then there were several other crimes or questionable behaviors happening in the meantime that were making solving it that much more difficult. So basically, the story is told from the point of view of a man who's friends with Poirot. And he is like on leave from the military or something to that effect. I don't think it was the military, but something. That's not important. And he is spending a month at an old friend of his house. It's called Styles. That's the name of their house. And so he's staying there, and the people who live there are his old friend John, John's wife Mary, John's younger brother Leonard. That's not right. Something that starts with an L. Leonard. I'm just gonna call him Leonard because I can't remember his name. Maybe I should check. What was his name? It started with an L. Lawrence. I was close. Lawrence. So he lives there. All right, so we have John, his wife Mary, John's brother Lawrence, and then their stepmother, who they basically grew up with, and they know her as mother, and they don't call her mother, but like she was married to their father since they were little. She like helped raise them, etc. So it's her house because when the father died, she inherited it through marriage. So it's her home, but it's like the family home. And when she dies, John's going to inherit it. And Lawrence gets a large sum of money as well from the father once the stepmother. Oh, I can't remember any names. It hasn't even been that long. Oh my goodness. She had Emily. So it's Emily is the stepmother, and Emily also has like a personal assistant named Evie, and they're like kind of like best friends. Evie's younger, and like they're really close, and she's kind of like a personal assistant. And then Evie also took in a young girl, Cynthia. They never really say how old she is. I'm guessing she's like 19, 20, 21 because spoiler alert, by the end she and Lawrence kind of had like started a romance. So I'm assuming she's like in her late teens, early 20s, like that age range. So she lives there too. And then we come to find out that within the last few months, Emily, who's like 72 years old, she recently met a man and married him. So he, like, everybody in the family is questioning him and like they're suspicious. Like, she's an old lady. He's like 30 years younger than him. They're like, he's a gold digger. We don't trust him. We don't like him. And she just won't hear any of it. She's like, no, this is real. I love him. He's a good guy. I can do what I want. I'm, a 70 some year old woman. Like, mind your business, right? But like everybody, particularly Evie, her like good friend, personal assistant person, she's really against this new husband, whose name I also forget, but I'll check in a minute. So she really hates this guy. She's like, listen, I know him. I knew him before he came into your life. He's a scoundrel. She actually uses that word several times. He's a scoundrel. Like, you don't want to trust him. And so then the brothers are like, oh, great. He's coming in here trying to get our money, our father's money, by marrying her. And then, she's older, so she's going to die and he's going to get everything. So they don't like him. Cynthia, the teenage girl, the early 20s, the younger woman who lives there, she's just like, yeah, I don't really trust him. He gives me the heebie-jeebies, but he's fine. And if Emily's happy, that's all that matters. But as the story slowly unfolds, you realize that Cynthia is like, she's dependent on Emily, Miss Emily. And so she's like, well, whatever Emily wants, I'm going to support that because she doesn't want to be thrown out. Cynthia works as a nurse, and she doesn't, she's not married, and this takes place like, back in the day. So she's like, if I, get on Emily's bad side and I get kicked out, I'm screwed. Like, I don't have anywhere to live. I don't make that much money as a nurse. So I'm not going to cause any waves, right? But Evie causes a lot of waves to the point where Emily and she get into this big screaming match, and Evie's like, fine, like, if you're not gonna listen to me when I'm trying to warn you about this scoundrel of a man who's a gold digger and trying to steal your money, I'm out. So she like packs her bags and leaves, and is basically like, our friendship over, whatever, deal with your life yourself. Don't come crying to me whenever he screws you over or whatever. And then you also have this other mystery with John and Mary. They are having some questionable things in their relationship too. She's really good friends with this doctor man, Dr. like Bauerstein or something like that. And she spends a lot of time with him, and he's like older. And another little hitch is like the husband, the new young husband, has a beard, and so does Dr. Bauerstein. So that's like a little detail that's going to come back in later. Let's see if I can figure out Alfred, the husband's name, the young new husband, the scoundrel. His name is Alfred. Okay, so John and Mary are also having like some marital issues because Mary keeps spending all of her time or free time with this Dr. Bauerstein guy. And then so this guy, the narrator, Henry, I forget. He's the narrator, so they don't say his name a whole lot. But he is like staying there temporarily, and he's there for about a week. He's just kind of getting the feel of all these people coming and going, and all the the drama and stuff happening in this family. And in one night, in the middle of the night, it was like 5 a.m., 4:30, 5 a.m. Mary, who gets up that early every day for whatever reason, she is up and she hears crashes in Emily's room, and she hears Emily screaming. Excuse me. So she wakes up who does she go and ask to come with her? I don't remember. She gets somebody, or maybe she just goes. I think she just goes on her own. She just goes on her own and starts like knock. Oh no, I think she wakes up her husband. She wakes up her husband. Duh. She wakes up her husband and is like, I hear these noises. So she and her husband go running over. All of the doors are locked. So Emily's room and then her husband's room and then Cynthia's room are all, in a row down the hallway, and all of the doors are locked. They can't get in. So they hear her in there screaming and like choking and like clearly in distress. And they hear like furniture being knocked over, and it's like, we need to get in there. Something's happening. So they go in. Finally, they break down the door and they get in there. And she's like seizing and having a seizure and like foaming at the mouth and like it's awful. She's very, very clear, like she's just like spazzing. So they go over and they try to help her, and she says, Alfred. Those are her last words, and then she dies. Okay. And then moments later, Dr. Bauerstein shows up and he's like, oh, I was just here from my morning walk, and one of the servants, they said, like, called one of the servants, like, go get an ambulance, go get the police. And he's like, I was just out on my morning walk. I just happened to be walking past the gate when, I don't know, whatever the servant's name is, Joe Schmo, came out and told me what was going on, and I came right up. So Dr. Bauerstein is not Emily's doctor. Remember, he's the one that, like, Mary spends a lot of time with. He just happened to be walking past at 5 o'clock, 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, shortly, whatever. So he comes in and he does like an investigation a little bit, and he's like, yes, she's dead. P.S. Dr. Bauerstein is an expert in poison. He's an expert in toxicology, and he knows all about poison. So he's like, she has been poisoned. She's been poisoned with strychnine poisoning. That I know all these symptoms, and this is what happened. I have no doubt. I know what I'm talking about. I'm an expert here. She's been killed. She was poisoned by strychnine. And Lawrence is like, I don't know. Like, that seems a little far-fetched. Are you sure she didn't? I mean, she's old. She's strenuous. We just had, like, a really busy weekend doing stuff. Maybe she just had a heart attack. And so everybody's like, why would you even say that, Lawrence? Like, did you not see her, like, having a seizure and, like, all these weird things? Like, that's not a heart attack. So, like, now you're a little suspicious of Bauerstein. Like, why was he there? Why was he just like, oh, it's strychnine poisoning? And then Lawrence is suspicious because he's like, oh, it's just a heart attack. No reason to call the police or, like, do an autopsy or anything like that. Y'all are just getting out of hand. It's just a heart attack. She's well, also, Mary is suspicious because Mary's the one who first heard the noises from the other side of the house, like this big mansion. She's on the other side of the house, and she allegedly hears her screaming. And then Cynthia slept through the whole thing because when they couldn't get into Emily's room, they then go to like Cynthia's room trying to get in Cynthia's room. They can't get in there. So when they finally get into Emily's, there's doors that connect her room to Cynthia's. Closed and bolted on both sides, like a hotel room, like an adjoining room. And that door is also locked. But when they go over into Cynthia's room, she's sound asleep. Like, how do you sleep through this? Like, we literally just broke down the door and you slept through all of this. And so she's suspicious, like, yeah, you really slept through all of this? So far, like, everybody's suspicious. But then also, she has this new young husband who's everybody's already suspicious of anyway. So everybody's like, Alfred. So they go into Alfred's room. He's not there. The bed is empty. It has not been slept in. Nobody knows where he is. Couple of hours later, he comes traipsing home, and like he has no idea what's happening. And they ask him, like, where have you been? And he's like, oh, I was playing cards with my buddy last night, like I always do on whatever it was. And he's like, and I forgot my key, so I figured I would just, stay there at the buddy's house, and I would come home once the household was up and come home. Perfectly legitimate excuse. They like confirm, like, yes, that happened. They didn't like confirm, like, well, show us where your key is, where you left it. Like, they thought about that after the fact, but it was too late. So they're like, well, he could have put it back by now. But they confirmed with his friend that he was there late playing cards and then ended up sleeping there because, as he told him, he didn't have his keys. So even his friend was like, well, yeah, that's what happened. He told me he forgot his keys, so I told him that he could spend the night here. And then he left in the morning and went home. So he has an alibi. So now they're trying to figure out, like, okay, how was she poisoned? Like, first of all, like, we obviously need to figure out who poisoned her, but we might be able to figure out who poisoned her if we figure out how she was poisoned. So at this point, Hercule Poirot hasn't even joined the party, okay? But the narrator, I think, like I said, I think his name was Henry or something like that. He goes, I don't remember where he goes, somewhere, and he like bumps into, he goes to the post office, I think. It doesn't matter. He bumps into Hercule Poirot, and he's like, oh my gosh, my old friend, how are you doing? And Hercule's like, oh, I'm just on a little holiday. I'm staying in these little cottages in downtown. I love little village. Blah, 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 blah. And Henry's like, well, hey, while you're here, as it turns out, you're this world famous detective who's known for solving very difficult situations. I got one for you. As it happens, like yesterday, I'm staying at my friend John's house, and his stepmother was murdered last night, early this morning, whenever it was. And Hercule is like, oh my gosh, take me right. So Hercule goes and he starts investigating himself, and he starts doing his own questioning of all the servants, and he finds out all this information that nobody else thought to ask, obviously, because he's the professional detective, right? Well, all kinds of stuff comes out while Poirot is interviewing and interrogating all these people. First, he notices all these odd things in Emily's room. There was her nightly cocoa. She has like cocoa in her room every night because she wakes up in the middle of the night and drinks her cocoa. It was still there, and it was drunk. It was completely empty. So he's like, okay, well, maybe the cocoa is poisoned. Who provides her cocoa every night? So he sees that, and then he also notices that she has like an attaché case. She's like an elderly, wealthy woman, so she keeps her papers in a locked like briefcase thingy. So he's like, okay, where's the key? We need to figure out where the key is. So he has like, now he's going to look into the cocoa, he's going to look into the suitcase, and then he also noticed that there was candle wax drippings by the window, and he's like, that's suspicious too. Like it was like in a particular spot where he realized that whoever spilled it obviously had to be there at night, because who lights a candle unless it's dark out? And it was also right next to a table that was a little wobbly. So he's like, whoever it was put it here. And he also, in his investigation, finds a little slip of paper in the fireplace that had, he only said a couple of words. Like all the papers had been burned, but there was one little piece still left and had a couple of letters on it, like a partial word. And so he's all like, he's into it. He's like, all right, I'm figuring this out. So the first thing he does is he investigates the cocoa, right? And so he asks the servant girl who gets the cocoa every night for it, what happened. And she's like, well, that night, after dinner, they all had their coffee, but Miss Emily seemed particularly agitated, and she said she was going to go to bed early. And so she asked me to put her cocoa together and bring it up to her room. And when I did that, in the middle of it, something happened, and I had to like set the cocoa down in the hallway and go take care of something. I don't remember, like somebody knocked at the door or something. And so I set it down, I did my thing, and then I came back and I took the cocoa up. So then Poirot's like, oh, so the cocoa was unattended and left in the hallway for a time being before it was taken up. It could have been anybody. It could have been anybody who put the poison in the cocoa before it was taken up. So he's like piecing it all together. And then he's, interviewing some other people, and one of the other servants is like, oh, yesterday at about 4:00 before dinner, I overheard Miss Emily having somebody. It was a male voice, and she's like, I assume it was her husband, because she heard Miss Emily say something to the effect of like, I don't care about a scandal between husband and wife. This is not okay, and I'm not going to stand for it. And so the servant assumes that she was having an argument with her husband, Alfred, that Alfred did something, and she was like, I don't even care. Like this is not okay, and there's a scandal, but I'm not going to put up with this crap, right? So the servant tells Poirot that. So he's like, okay, so there's this Coco thing, there was the argument, there was the piece of paper in the fireplace, and we still need to figure out how to get into that suitcase. So he starts trying to figure out where these women's keys are. Well, he finds the keys. Is my eye makeup okay? I feel like I could do a little bit something more interesting, but it's fine. It's fine. So he finally finds the keys because, you know, she lives there, so the keys are around. And he gets the suitcase open and he finds, when he finally gets the keys and he goes to open the suitcase, the lock has been picked. He can tell that the lock has been picked. And so he's suspicious. Like, the last time I saw this suitcase, that evidence wasn't there, but now suddenly there's evidence of the lock being picked. So now he's like super suspicious. There's clearly something important. He opens it up and he finds her will that basically states that everything is going to go to the sons as planned. Like, even though she's been remarried, it doesn't list her new husband as the recipient of her fortune. Everything, like, some money will go to him, but the house is going to go to John. Some other property is going to go to Lawrence, etc. Like a normal will. And then he also realizes, as he's looking at the will, the piece of paper that he is the same paper and the same, like, font and ink and everything of a will. So he's like, this will has been burned. Like, what? So he continues investigating and asking people questions. And another servant tells them that, so at 4:00, the argument was overheard, right? And then she said that shortly thereafter, he asked her to go to the store and buy a blank will form thing on, like, official paper. And so he's like, okay, so she must have written a new will after the argument. So it, like, supports the idea of Alfred. She had in a fight. She got in an argument with Alfred. Something happened. Problems in their marriage, and she's rewriting the will. But Poirot's like, well, why would she rewrite the will? Like, he hardly gets anything in the will as it is. So, like, what's she gonna change? Is she putting him on the will or what? Like, but then she burned it. So he's, like, all confused. So he's still trying to put the pieces together. And then in the meantime, you overhear that John and his wife Mary are also having problems. Henry takes a stroll around the property, like all the, the grounds, and over arguing, and she's saying something to the effect of, like, well, I don't see why you have such an issue with me hanging out with Dr. Bauerstein. He's not that bad of a person, and you, of all people, have no right to tell me who I spend my free time with. Okay? And so Henry is like, ooh, that's some gossip right there. And then, so he's now suspicious of John, thinking, Mary having an affair, and does that have something to do with this? Is she having an affair with the doctor? And, like, well, Henry thinks, like, well, maybe it was Mary and Dr. Bauerstein, and, like, they were worried about the affair getting out, and she's not going to get any of the money. Like, it's going to come down to her husband, and then she would get the house, etc., etc. So maybe those two were in cahoots. And then it was like, well, then why would he be like, why would the doctor say, oh, it was the poison? If he's the one who poisoned her, wouldn't they, like, direct him somewhere else? So we don't know. Like, everybody, it's questionable. Everything's questionable. So now Poirot realizes that Cynthia, who works at the hospital, she's not a nurse. Like, everybody assumed she was a nurse. She's not a nurse. She works in the pharmacy, and she puts together medicines for the doctors to use. So, because of her experience and expertise, puts together sleeping powders for Miss Emily because she has trouble sleeping. So she puts together these sleeping powders, and when Poirot starts looking into it, Cynthia's like, well, yeah, this is how I do it, and she usually gets, like, 2 weeks or so at a time, and she just, pours out a little bit of the powder and drink, and it helps her sleep. She's like, I give her like two weeks worth at a time, whatever. And then he's like, okay, well, let's look into the sleeping powder. And as it turns out, she took the last dose of sleeping powder on the night she died. So, and then the servant was like, well, yeah, that makes sense. She hadn't for a couple of days because she, was sleeping just fine. They've been busy. She was doing like some sort of like charity event. So she had been tired and didn't need any. But then the servant girl was like, I do remember she did have some that night. So, because she was, upset and distraught over allegedly the argument she had with Alfred, right? So she had the sleeping draught the night before, the sleeping powder the night before she died. So now they're like, well, maybe somebody poisoned the sleeping powder. So they're thinking it's Cynthia. And maybe someone with will that, Cynthia was cut out of the will for whatever reason. And so she like burned the new will and killed her so that the old will where she got some money was going to be in place. All these things. So like you think like, is it the Mary and is it Lawrence because he's jealous that he doesn't get the house? Is it the husband as it like always is? Is it Cynthia? Like nobody knows. So they're all literally everybody has a legitimate reason to off Miss Emily. And I, as the reader, I literally suspected everybody at one point or another. That's what I love about Agatha Christie. She has a lot of characters and a lot of things going on, and so you're just like, oh my god, so like it literally could be anybody, and that's what makes it so interesting and fun. That's what makes her story so interesting and fun. Well, of course, Poirot figures it out. He figures it out quite early, and then he does a few things to try to solidify his theories. So he goes and he gets the bottle of strychnine in Cynthia's office, and he tests it for fingerprints, which at that time when the story takes place, it was very brand new, so it wasn't like a standard thing. He had to like send it somewhere, and it was like this special thing to do, special request. He starts investigating the doctor, and unbeknownst to him, he figures out that Dr. Bauerstein, he suddenly gets arrested while, oh wait, let me back up. They arrest Alfred because obviously the husband is like the most obvious person to have done it. So they arrest him, but then they don't have enough evidence. So it never goes to trial. Like they go to like the pre-trial to determine if whether or not he's going to be officially indicted or whatever. And they didn't have enough, so they let him go. But they're like, don't leave town. So then they did the thing with John, because then there was evidence that it was John, because they were like, oh, you had an argument with your wife, and she married this guy and he was going to get all of the fortune, so you had to get rid of her before the new will went into effect, da 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 da. He ended up being acquitted. Like that one went through a whole trial. Like the story jumps ahead basically 2 months, and in like one chapter they summarize the trial. Information comes out because like John's trying to prove that it wasn't him. Spoiler alert, it was not John. So he was acquitted, and they're like, they don't know it was him, so they don't think it was him. So now they're trying to figure out what the heck is going on. And during the trial, they also get some questionable things from Evie gets brought back, and Evie's testifying. She has questionable things. Mary very clearly is not the whole story. There's something that she's not telling. And then Dr. Bauerstein is interrogated and like not interrogated, he's like on the witness stand, and he has some questionable things that he says with regards to like what he knows about poison. He's like, the weird thing is strychnine works within like an hour or two. So if it was in the coffee, like everybody thinks that she had at like 9 p.m., why didn't it do anything until the next morning? Why did it take 6 hours or more to kick in? So like they're all confused, like why didn't the strychnine kick in faster? And then like, well, maybe it was in the cocoa, but they tested the cocoa and the cocoa did not have any evidence of strychnine in it. So like it couldn't have been the cocoa. So everybody was super confused. Like, first of all, how was she poisoned? Like how did the poison even get into her system? Nobody knows. But then, through investigation into Dr. Bauerstein, they find out that he's actually a spy. So he was a spy for the German Nazis. I don't know why that was in the story at all, but he was a spy for the German Nazis. That comes out after John's trial. So then Poirot, because he's a freaking genius, he starts to piece all these little questionable odds and ends together, and he's like, I have solved it. Bring everybody together and I will tell you what happened and also tell you who is guilty, what happened, everything. That's how all Agatha Christie stories end. They always end with Hercule Poirot solving everything in front of everybody and like pinpointing the murderer in front of everybody, and then he's arrested and the end. It's pretty cool. So everybody comes together and he's like, all right, so this is what happened. Are you ready to hear? Are you ready to hear? Hold on. I dropped my... I'm going to put on some of this today. So he's like, okay, so this is what happened. He's like, when we first arrived, we met Evie and she got into a little argument about how much she hates this man, and she basically got kicked out of the house and sent away. That Emily's like, I don't want to have anything to do with you anymore. How dare you? I thought you were my friend, blah, blah, blah. So that, he's like, you were so vehemently against Alfred. So that was weird. Like, why were you so against him? Like, you didn't even give him a chance. Everybody else was like, well, he has some good qualities, and if she's happy, isn't that what's most important? Blah, 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 blah. And so they're like, that was questionable, right? And then she left and was out of the house. And then he's like, you conveniently forgot this, your key, Alfred. And then, basically he figures out, this is what happened. Okay, you ready? This is what happened. So Evie and Alfred were actually cousins. And this was a long con plan that they put together a long time ago. She really did not like Miss Emily all that much. Emily did not treat her very well as a personal assistant, and she was pretty sure that Evie was not getting much, if anything, in the will, and that really upset her for all the work that she does for Miss Emily all the time. And so she brought her cousin in, who actually was a scoundrel and a con man, to woo Emily, marry her, and then they had this murderous plot to kill her once Alfred was the benefactor of the fortune. So Evie planned to get in a fight with Miss Emily and be kicked out of the house as an alibi for not being around. And they wanted Alfred to be the primary suspect because they had the plan of him being locked out of the house with another perfect alibi for whatever night she ended up getting poisoned, which is what happened. So they both had airtight alibis. They could not be convicted. But what they did is they planned. Okay, so she ended up being murdered because they knew that she took her sleeping pill at a particular time every night, and that, where's my blush? There it is. That's not what I need. So she had 2 weeks worth of sleeping powder, and she put it in every night a little bit. But I don't think it was a powder. I actually think it was like, I don't know. It was kind of unclear. So she had 2 weeks worth of sleeping powder, and they knew that if you put strychnine in it and you poured out a little bit over the span of 2 weeks, the strychnine that was in it would slowly settle to the bottom, so the last dose would be mostly strychnine poisoning. They knew that. How they knew that, I don't know. They didn't have Google back then. But either way, I know. Evie's father was a doctor. So she had some knowledge and experience through like helping him and like assisting him. So she knew that that was how it would work. That strychnine would like settle, and then like her last dose would be mostly strychnine. And so when she took the last dose in that bottle, she would be poisoned. And because it was like mixed in with the sleeping powder, which like slowed your metabolism, and because she something else, like because she skipped the coffee and had something, like all these different factors came into effect, and that's what caused it to be delayed until the middle of the night. And so they literally planned this for like a year, 2 years, till they were able to like put it together and like make it happen. And then they planned also to pin it all on John, because as the son who would be losing his fortune and possibly his father's homestead to this newcomer guy, would seem completely like the person who did it, right? I mean, it's logical, especially since Alfred had an airtight alibi. They're like, the next obvious suspect would be John. And also, they also knew that John was having an affair with another lady, which, if you remember earlier, they were having the argument. You have no right to tell me who I spend my free time with, you of all people. So like they knew that he was having an affair, and so they like brought that in and made him look suspicious. And and the argument that she allegedly had with Alfred about like, this is, I don't care about a scandal between husband and wife, I'm not going to stand for it, I'm not going to let this happen. She was actually arguing with John, which is part of the reason it made John look bad. So like everything just came together perfectly, like the affair and the fight between John and Mary, and then like who happened to say like, I don't know what I'm gonna do if I don't, like, if Miss Emily dies, like I don't know if I'm in the will, like all of these things, Alfred having an alibi, it all came together for them absolutely perfectly. So they planned it to be that last night of that she takes her sleeping pill. Evie was gone for like the past 2 weeks because of the argument. Alfred, lost himself out of the house conveniently that night. And then also, Mary had something. Oh, Mary had something to do with it too, because they were like, Mary, there's no way you could have, the night of the murder, could have heard her screaming, because you were way on the other side of the house, and like that just doesn't make sense. And as it turns out, Mary was looking for something about her husband, like something else entirely, but Mary was actually in her bedroom that night, and there was evidence that she was in the bedroom, so that's what she was keeping secret at the trial, because she knew that she was in Miss Emily's bedroom the night she died, and that would look really bad. So when they were like on trial for John, so there was that little bit in there too. I don't know why it feels like my blush is like not showing up, but whatever, it's fine. So that all came down, and Poirot was like, that's how it all went down. It was them, they did it, they were in cahoots the whole time. They ended up getting arrested, and yeah, Poirot solved it. And then Mary and John ended up reconciling, because like the trauma of the situation like brought them together, blah blah blah. And it was a lovely happy ending. Poirot solved it, found the murderers. Oh, and then Lawrence and Cynthia getting, because Lawrence like kept saying little things about how Cynthia and and Cynthia's like, I don't know what I'm gonna do, and like I have no prospects. And so Poirot ended up orchestrating the two of them getting together, and happily ever after all around. It was quite good. It had, like I said, it had happy endings with a little bit of romances. The marriage was reconciled. Lawrence ended up finding somebody within Cynthia. Both murderers were caught. The freaking Nazi spy got caught. Yeah, it was very interesting the way it all came together. Agatha Christie is really good at like pulling all these things together, and like making all these all these different subplots and storylines come together in a nice little bow. Very, very good. I think, even though you know how it ends because I just told you the entire spoiler, I think you would still enjoy reading it because, like, if you know who it is, then you'll get to see all the little clues and you'll get to see, like, oh, that, oh, and then, ooh, okay, and I can see why that part was confusing or was like, you know, that's where the mystery came from, blah, blah, blah. Like, it'll be cool because you'll get to see how it all came together and how Poirot pinpointed that important detail and pinpointed that important detail. Excuse me, and ignored that detail. Or like realize that person was lying. It was really cool. Agatha Christie is a good writer. Poirot is on par with like Sherlock Holmes with pulling things together. Love it. Absolutely love it. I give it a 10 out of 10. I read it very quickly. I loved it. I had no idea who done it. I literally suspected everybody at one point except Evie. I never thought Evie was going to be involved in it. So I loved it. Absolutely loved it. I have thought Cynthia did it. Anyway, I digress. I highly recommend you read it. So, I hope you liked my summary. I hope you choose to read this book. I loved it. 10 out of 10. I think you should give it a read. If you have read it before, if you think you might want to read it, please comment below. Tell me what you think. And I would love to hear your comments. If you have read any other Agatha Christie books that you think I would enjoy, comment. I read and then there were none, Death on the Nile, and this one, and then the one about A Murder is Announced. So I've read those titles. If you've read any other titles you want to recommend some to me, please add them to the comments below. I will definitely put it on my to-read list. And then this is my look for today. This is another one of my go-to looks. It's just like some pinks and browns. This lipstick. Oh my gosh. I gotta tell you. I know this video is long. I'm sorry. This is all I have left. Look, that's it. That's it. And it's discontinued. They don't make it anymore. They have this exact same color, but now it's in a matte lip. Like it's on a stick. Like you take the lid off and it's on a stick and then you put it on. I hate that. I mean, it's fine, but I want this. It doesn't exist anymore. Isn't it pretty? Anywho, I hope you like my look. I like this look. I do this look pretty regularly, so I hope you enjoy it. I hope you don't think I look weird. I hope you think I look nice. Maybe you'll copy it one day. I don't know, do you. You do you. Whatever you think feels good and makes you feel good. That's all that matters. So thank you for watching my video. I know it was long and I apologize. It was a good book. Yeah, so have a fantastic everything. And stay beautiful inside and out. Bye.